Because all of this stuff, it's all easy to do. Anyone can do it. But it's all just so damn boring, most won't. And that's why the middle class is disappearing. Look, this isn't easy. The system is rigged, but it was built to be rigged, which means it can be unbuilt.
This is the Epic Real Estate Podcast. Contrarian takes on money, housing, and policy without the guru nonsense.
Let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go.
Let's go.
And look, the American middle class. It's that thing we all think we're a part of, like a giant, vaguely stressed out book club where everyone is just pretending they finished the reading. It's the American dream, right? The house, the 2.5 kids, the golden retriever, the simmering panic about a $700 medical bill. But here's the thing, that dream is turning into a fever-induced nightmare where you're trying to run, but your legs are made of avocado toast. In 1971, 61% of us were in the middle class. Today, it's 50%. That's not a decline, that's a disappearing act. You're becoming an endangered species, and the main poacher is everything. Let's start with the big one, housing, the cornerstone of the middle class dream, that little white picket fence fantasy. Well, guess what? That fence is now made of solid gold unicorn horns, and you can't afford it. The data says 45% of middle income renters are now cost burdened, meaning they spend over 30% of their income just on rent. That's double what it was in 2001. You're spending so much on a roof that you can't afford to put anything under it, except maybe a pile of your own tears. And if you want to buy a house, good one. You now need a six-figure income to afford a home in over 150 metro areas outside of California. That's right, it's not just San Francisco or LA anymore. You can now be spectacularly priced out of places you've barely even heard of. Sorry, honey, we can't afford that starter home in Boise, Idaho. We don't have the $100,000 salary. And it gets worse. Because while your rent is skyrocketing, your wages are not. Oh, sure, they'll tell you wages are up. Real hourly earnings increased 1.3% last year. 1.3%. That's not a raise. That's a statistical sneeze. That's the kind of increase your boss gives you, hoping you won't notice it's an insult. Here's what that really means. A household making $100,000 today has the same purchasing power as one making $80,000 in 2020. Your money is literally shrinking. It's like the movie, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, but instead of Rick Moranis, the villain is just the entire economy. So where did all the money go? Oh, I'm so glad you asked. It went to the corporate overlords. Market concentration is at a record high. A few giant companies in healthcare, tech, and even groceries are sitting on the economy like a 500-pound gorilla, suppressing your wages and jacking up prices just because they can. And at the exact same time, union membership, the one tool designed to give workers a tiny bit of leverage, has been systematically dismantled, falling from over 20% of workers in 1983 to just 10% today. It's like they invited you to a boxing match, broke both of your arms, and then wondered why you weren't fighting back hard enough. So how do you fight back? Now, this is the part where some financial guru tells you to just tighten your belt or cut back on lattes. But you can't cut back on a rent payment that just ate your entire paycheck. The solutions they offer are just insulting. They tell you to try fractional real estate investing. Well, congratulations. For just $100, you can now own a single non-load bearing brick in a duplex in Ohio. You're not a homeowner, you're just a patron of a very specific brick. Or my favorite, house hacking. That's the cheerful Silicon Valley term for having roommates in your 40s. Yes, the new American dream, buying a duplex you can't afford so you can live in one half and rent out the other, effectively making you the live-in, stressed out landlord to a stranger who definitely doesn't clean the microwave. That's not wealth building, that's a sitcom plot from hell. And then there's the side hustle. You don't just have one job anymore. Oh no, you're a full-time office manager, a part-time DoorDash driver, and you sell bespoke hand-knitted hats for cats on Etsy. You're not even a person anymore. You're a walking sleep-deprived conglomerate. No, here's the real fight. If you actually want to save yourselves, you have to stop thinking like a hustler and start thinking like a class. First, Unions. I know. For some of you, that word conjures up images of burly men in hard hats. But the evidence is crystal clear. Union workers earn about 20% more than their non-union peers. That's not a side hustle. That's just your main job paying you what you're worth. And guess what? Union petitions are up 53%. People are finally remembering that collective bargaining is just a fancy term for not letting your boss screw you over individually. Second, politics. And I'm not talking about the red versus blue screaming match. No, I mean local politics. The stuff that actually screws you. The single biggest threat to your housing stability is zoning. In most of America, it is literally illegal to build anything other than a giant single-family house. Why? Because the people who already have their houses show up to town meetings and complain that a duplex, God forbid, will ruin the neighborhood character. What they mean is, I don't want to see people who can't afford my house living in my neighborhood. We need to fix this. We need to actually allow smaller, more affordable homes to be built. And finally, anti-monopoly. We have to break these giant companies up. Your grocery bill isn't high because of inflation. It's high because 2 or 3 giant chains colluded to buy out all their competitors, and now they can charge you $9 for a box of cereal. This isn't capitalism. It's a protection racket. So, what's the move? Well, do the boring stuff first. Yes, build that 3 to 6 month emergency fund. Automate it. It's your financial armor. You can't fight a dragon if you're naked. This book right here, Profit First, changed my life. Get it. And then get political, but small. Go to a city council meeting, just one. Find out who's blocking a new apartment building in your town and ask them, why do you hate people who want to live here? Talk about your salary. Seriously, the only person who benefits from wage secrecy is your boss. Talk to your coworkers. And if you're really feeling spicy, whisper the word union around the office. Look, this isn't easy. The system is rigged, but it was built to be rigged, which means it can be unbuilt. Did you know the top 1% of Americans now hold more wealth than the entire middle class, all 51% combined? Now, if that doesn't make you want to go start a union, or at the very least show up at a zoning meeting, I truly don't know what will. Or you can just follow the proverbial words of Will Rogers. Don't wait to buy real estate. Buy real estate and wait. Because all of this stuff, it's all easy to do. Anyone can do it. But it's all just so damn boring, most won't. And that's why the middle class is disappearing.
A lack of capital has killed a lot of dreams, but only for the people who don't know the loophole. If you have a 680 credit score or better and could use up to $150K at 0% to kickstart your next venture, get approval in 30 seconds or less, and you don't even have to talk to anyone at loopholelending.com. Okay, back to the show.
It is time for Money Power Politics, and the president is once again escalating his fight with the Federal Reserve Chair, Jerome Powell.
Today, President Trump once again berating Fed Reserve Chair Jerome Powell.
This week, he again mulled over the idea of firing Powell.
This guy is a numbskull. He keeps the rates too high.
And look, I know you're seeing a lot of headlines right now that look absolutely terrifying. Trump attacking the Federal Reserve. The Fed is losing its independence. This is seriously dangerous. And let's be honest, when that man attacks an institution, it's usually because it either refused to stock his line of branded victory water, or, it's the concept of a fair election. And I'm a fan. I voted for him, and I'd do it again. But this is the one thing that you really need to understand, because to get why a president trying to control the Fed is so terrifying, you have to know what the Fed is. And I promise you, you have absolutely no idea. I mean, you might think you do. It has federal in the name. It's in Washington, D.C., in a big, important-looking marble building. It must be part of the government, right? Wrong. The thing is, the name Federal Reserve is basically a lie. It's a misnomer, which is a fancy word for it's lying directly to your face. It's like calling a koala bear a bear. It's not a bear, it's a marsupial. It's a judgmental, leaf-eating fuzzball of chlamydia. And the Federal Reserve, it's not federal. And as for reserves, let's just say its $6.7 trillion balance sheet, down from a peak of nearly $9 trillion in 2022, looks less like a nation's savings account and more like the world's most complicated and terrifying IOU that they're desperately trying to shrink. So if it's not the government, what is it? Well, let's go to the Fed's own website. This isn't some conspiracy blog. This is from the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta. And I quote, "The Fed is organized similarly to private corporations." And it gets worse. Who owns it? You? Me? A very patriotic squirrel? No. Again, their words. The reserve banks are owned by the member banks. And like any good country club, dividends are paid to the member banks. And that's by law. 6% for smaller banks, or whatever's less between 6% and the 10-year treasury rate for the big boys. This is the organization that makes your country's monetary policy. They decide what your mortgage costs, currently sitting somewhere between a brutal 6.2 to 6.8%, or what your car payment is, whether your savings account earns anything other than contempt. And it is a private cartel of bankers who are legally guaranteed their dividends for the privilege of owning the place. It's like finding out the Supreme Court is owned by Ticketmaster, and all the justices get a cut of the convenience fees. And this brings us to Trump. He has been trying to fire the Fed chair, Jerome Powell, for one reason. Trump wants interest rates cut. Not just cut, he wants them slashed.
President Trump asked a group of GOP lawmakers if he should fire Fed Chair Jerome Powell.
President Trump is once again taking aim at his own pick for America's most powerful economic post, Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell. Despite nominating him in 2017, Trump now wants him out.
And so when the Fed rate was at 4.5%, Trump was on social media demanding they cut it by 3%. That's not a haircut. That's a full-on public scalping. He wants lower rates to boost the economy, lower borrowing costs, and crucially reduce the interest payments the U.S. government has to make on its massive, massive debt. The problem here is cutting rates like that would be like throwing a tanker truck of gasoline onto the smoldering ashes of inflation. And here's the thing. While we're sitting at 4 to 4.25%, Switzerland is at 0.25%. Japan just crawled out of negative rates, and the European Central Bank is at 2.75%. We're actually among the highest in the developed world. So what did the independent Fed do at its last meeting on September 17th? They did cut the rate by a whopping 0.25%.
We begin this hour with your money and a highly anticipated decision that I believe was made just seconds ago by the Federal Reserve. The central bank has just voted to cut interest rates by 0.25 percentage point. This is the first rate cut since December of last year.
It was the monetary policy equivalent of trying to stop a charging rhino with a stern look. And to add insult to injury, they released projections saying they might get rates down to 3 to 3.25% by the end of 2028. Trump did not like that. So Trump did what Trump does. He decided to remodel the place by force. First, he's been publicly and privately going after voting members. A Biden nominee, Lisa Cook, is currently fighting for her job as Trump tries to oust her over mortgage fraud allegations. That battle is now pending at the Supreme Court.
Well, in other news, President Donald Trump is taking his fight to fire Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook all the way to the Supreme Court. He's asking the High Court to clear the way to remove her from the board entirely, which would change the face and the voting makeup of that board. Of course, this comes one day after the Fed cut interest rates for the first time in, 9 months? Mr. Trump says he fired Cook on the grounds that she committed mortgage fraud. Well, Cook fired back, denying this, and says the president doesn't have the authority to fire her.
While that's been happening, another Biden nominee, Adriana Kugler, resigned back in August. And this is where it gets truly insane.
Well, this is a total surprise. Obviously, there was some issue that she had to deal with that made her miss the Fed meeting, which is an extremely unusual thing to do. But we don't have any information on why she is resigning at this point.
Resigning, I understand it was over the fact that she disagreed with somebody from her party. She disagreed with too late.
September 15th, Trump's economic advisor, Stephen Mirren, is confirmed by the Senate to fill Kugler's empty seat. The next day, September 16th, Mirren is sworn into the Federal Reserve. And then the next day, September 17th, Mirren walks into his very first vote and immediately dissents. The whole board voted for that tiny 0.25% cut. But Mirren, he demanded a 0.5% cut, exactly what Trump wanted. You can literally watch the CNBC interviews where Mirren explains his dissent like he's auditioning for the role of Trump's Fed chair. And he probably is.
So I think that growth is going to be better in the second half of the year because I think that growth in the first half of the year, which was weaker, but I think that that was caused in part by headwinds to the economy from uncertainty around trade policy and tax policy. There was the risk of the biggest tax hike in history, and that's been taken off the table and has been replaced with some powerful investment incentives. And there was uncertainty from trade policy, which has been replaced with trade deals and investment commitments. So I see better growth in the second half of the year.
So did you talk to him about how you would vote?
No, I did not. I did not talk to him about how I would vote. I did not talk to him about my dots in the statement of economic projections.
And you haven't talked to him since?
No.
This is called packing the Fed. And you might think, oh, Matt, it's just one vote out of 12. But the chair, Jerome Powell, his term expires May 2026, next year. And the second that happens, Trump will replace him with someone who thinks inflation is just what you do to a birthday balloon. And don't think the other 10 members will stand up to him. The Fed has what experts call a herd mentality. They just follow the leader, like a column of well-dressed ants marching toward whatever pile of sugar the new chair points at. Now you can agree or disagree with Trump. Maybe you want lower rates, fine. But you are missing the existential horror show here. The problem isn't just who is on the Fed. The problem is the Fed itself. The Constitution. You know, that document everyone loves to wave around at sporting events, but nobody has apparently read. Article 1, Section 8. It gives Congress the power to coin money, not a private organization of a cartel of bankers. The Founding Fathers hated this idea. Thomas Jefferson, and this is a real quote from his 1816 letter to John Taylor, not one your uncle found on Facebook, warned that banking establishments are more dangerous than standing armies. And he had to deal with an army that was literally just farmers with hunting rifles. And yet we have this thing, an organization that is not part of the government, that is owned by the very banks it's supposed to regulate, that has no checks and balances, and that answers to nobody. And it can, with the flip of a switch, print money and fundamentally alter your entire life. So what does this mean for your actual savings account when Powell leaves in May next year? Well, here's the brutal math. If Trump's new Fed chair slashes rates the way he wants, remember, he was demanding 3% cuts, your savings account that's currently earning maybe 4 to 5% will plummet back to earning basically, nothing. It'll earn nothing. Meanwhile, the money printing that comes with those rate cuts will send inflation soaring again. So you might be earning maybe 1% on your savings while your groceries go up at least 8% a year. It's financial death by 1,000 cuts. And here's what the history books tell us. When the Fed cuts rates aggressively, asset prices explode. We're talking 15 to 20% stock market gains. Real estate prices can jump from 5 to 10% annually. And if you're not holding assets, you're watching from the sidelines as your dollar loses 12% of its value against other currencies. It's like being the only person not invited to the world's most expensive party, but you are still paying for the champagne. When the Fed, whether it's Trump's version or the independent version, turns on the money printers and slashes rates, who wins? People who own assets, stocks, real estate, your boss's third home. And who loses? Everyone else. Your rent goes up, your groceries cost more, your savings account becomes a daily joke. It is a direct, high-speed transfer of wealth from the middle and lower classes to the ultra-rich. It widens the wealth gap until it becomes a chasm, and that always ends in chaos and civil unrest. What Trump is planning is just that, but on crystal meth. He's not just going to turn the money printers back on, he's going to kick it up a few notches. We're talking about accelerating inflation, a massive boost to asset prices, and a quickening of the entire world deciding our dollar is about as valuable as a used napkin. And here's the thing about independence. We've seen this movie before. In the 1970s, Nixon pressured Fed Chair Arthur Burns to keep rates low, and we got stagflation that took a decade to fix. It wasn't until Paul Volcker came in and jacked rates to 20% that we finally killed inflation. But that took a recession so brutal, it made grown economists cry. So what can you do? When Powell leaves in May, your savings won't just lose value gradually. They'll be in a controlled demolition because the new Fed chair won't just turn on the money printers. They're going to strap rocket boosters to them. Honestly, not much to stop this train, but you can try to protect yourself. This isn't financial advice, but a system designed to inflate away the value of your cash means you should probably learn about assets that don't lose value. Whether that's real estate or stocks, or I don't know, a bunker full of gold, which historically rises 25% during dollar debasement periods. Because it's pretty clear that the people in charge are playing a game of musical chairs, and they've already taken your chair, sold it for parts, and given themselves a 6% dividend on the profit. Now I know what you're thinking. Great, Matt, so I need to buy real estate to protect myself from this monetary madness. But I work 60 hours a week. I don't know a contractor from a con artist, and the last time I tried to fix a leaky faucet, I flooded my kitchen and somehow made it worse. Look, I get it. The Fed is about to turn your savings into monopoly money, but you don't have time to become a real estate mogul. Totally understand. You don't want to deal with 3 a.m. phone calls about broken toilets. You don't want to learn how to evaluate neighborhoods, and you definitely don't want to figure out if that charming fixer-upper is actually a money pit disguised as an investment opportunity. But here's the thing. There's actually a way to get into real estate investing without becoming a landlord, without learning construction, and without turning your weekends into a nerve-ending home improvement nightmare.
If you've been grinding for deals and coming up empty, you're not alone. That's why we created a way for frustrated investors to finally get cash flowing income property without the hassle. Go to frustratedinvestor.com. And now, back to the show.
And look, I know you've seen the headlines. You're scrolling through some dark corner of the internet, and a guy whose avatar is just an egg tells you BRICS is coming. The dollar is finished. Buy gold, buy crypto, buy my survival seeds. And it's terrifying. This big, scary club, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and now they've invited their new friends like Iran and the UAE to the party. It sounds like a geopolitical Avengers, if the Avengers' only superpowers were crushing dissent and arguing about commodity prices. They're all standing together at summits, looking very serious, and they're all saying, we are going to end the tyranny of the US dollar. But here's the thing, when you actually look at their plan to replace the dollar, it's not a plan. It's the financial equivalent of 5 guys in a bar saying, hey, we should totally start a band. But nobody plays an instrument and they all hate each other's music. The idea that this group is going to topple the US dollar isn't just wrong, it's spectacularly, hilariously wrong. First, let's talk about liquidity, which is a boring finance word that just means, can I sell this thing right now for the price I think it's worth? The US Treasury market, where people buy and sell American government debt, is the deepest, most liquid financial market in human history. It's a $28 trillion monster. On a slow day, over $900 billion trades hands. It's not a market, it's a global ocean. You can park a financial aircraft carrier in it and it doesn't even make a ripple. You know, when the entire world completely freaked out in March 2020, where did everyone run? They didn't run to the yuan, they didn't run to the ruble. They ran, screaming, to the safety of US treasuries. Now, what are the BRICS offering? China's market? It's big, sure, but it's also wrapped in more capital controls than a paranoid billionaire's panic room. Getting your money in, that's one thing. Getting it out is a whole other adventure. And then Russia's market, it's basically a going out of business sale where the building is on fire and the doors are locked. The combined bond markets of all the other BRICS nations are just tiny, illiquid puddles by comparison. You can't replace the Pacific Ocean with a series of inflatable kiddie pools. And then there's the small matter of the actual money. A reserve currency is supposed to be stable. It's the boring, reliable mattress that you stuff your global savings into. The US dollar? Yeah, our inflation at 3% isn't great. We can be mad about that. But look at the competition. Russia, 7.4% inflation. To stop their currency from becoming toilet paper, they just cranked up their interest rates to 21%. That's not monetary policy, that's a financial cry for help. South Africa, 5.9% inflation. India, 5.1%. Brazil, 4.5% inflation. Their currencies are about as stable as a Jenga tower during an earthquake. And it gets worse. They can't even agree on what to do. A single currency, or even a coordinated basket, needs a single interest rate. But right now, China is lowering its rates to save its imploding property market. Russia is jacking up its rates to stop the ruble from evaporating. And India is raising theirs also. They aren't a team. They're the cast of a reality show forced to live in the same house. Russia and South Africa, they love high oil and commodity prices because they sell that stuff. China and India despise high prices prices because they gotta buy it. Their economies are not aligned. They are actively at war with each other. A BRICS currency is a structural impossibility. Then we get to the ugly part. Why is the dollar the reserve currency? Is it because our economic policy is always brilliant? No, definitely not. It's about trust and power. When you buy a US Treasury bond, you are 99.9% sure that the US government won't just wake up one day and say, you know what, that's our money now. Why? Because we have courts, property rights, and a mostly independent legal system. It's boring, but it's predictable. Now, do you want to park $1 trillion in China? A country that can make its most famous billionaire disappear for 3 months because he gave the wrong speech? Or Russia, whose legal system is just a flowchart that always ends with, what does Vladimir Putin want? The ease of doing business ranking tells the whole story. The US is 8th on that list. China is 31st. India is 63rd. And Brazil is 124th. They rank somewhere between active war zone and literally the surface of the sun. And finally, there's the bouncer. The dollar isn't just backed by the full faith and credit of the US Treasury, it's backed by 11 aircraft carrier strike groups. It's backed by hundreds of military bases around the globe. That's the military financial nexus. It's the unspoken threat that says, you can trade in whatever currency you want, but wouldn't it be easier and safer to just use our dollars? What's the BRICS military alliance? Russia's army, which is currently being held to a standstill by a country a fraction of its size? It's not a contest. So look, is the dollar perfect? God, no. But is it being replaced by this chaotic, dysfunctional group of rivals who can't even agree on lunch? Absolutely not. And here's the perfectly absurd mic drop. The biggest, scariest, and most futuristic innovation in finance is cryptocurrency, right? This new age tech is designed to destroy the old system. Well, the fastest growing part of the crypto world is stable coins, digital tokens people use to trade. Well, in 2024, stable coins processed nearly $28 trillion in transactions, surpassing both Visa and MasterCard combined. And what are 99% of those stable coins pegged to? What are they a digital substitute for? That's right, the US dollar. The brand new, decentralized Finance 2.0 revolution is just a high-tech delivery system for the same old buck. We're not even trying and we're still winning. So what should you do? Well, stop listening to those TikTok scammers, first of all. The dollar isn't going anywhere. And maybe, just maybe, worry about our own debt and political dysfunction. That's the only thing that could actually kill the dollar, and that's an inside job. So is the dollar perfect? Hell no. We've got inflation. We've got debt. We've got politicians who think the national budget is a suggestion, but compared to the alternative, not even close. The dollar is like that old pickup truck that's been in your family for 30 years. Yeah, it makes weird noises, the paint is peeling, and sometimes it doesn't start on the first try, but it still gets you where you need to go. And more importantly, it's not going to randomly explode like your neighbor's innovative electric scooter. But here's the thing, and pay attention because this is important. Just because the dollar isn't getting dethroned doesn't mean it's getting stronger. Every single day, your dollars are quietly, politely losing purchasing power. It's not dramatic. There's no alarm bells. It's just happening. Like watching paint dry, except the paint is your savings account. The Federal Reserve has literally told you their plan. 2% inflation forever. That's their target. They're not trying to hide it. They're basically saying, hey, we're gonna make your money worth 2% less every year, and we think that's good for you. So here's what the smart money does, and I mean the really smart money. They don't fight the system. They don't buy survival seeds or hide gold bars in their backyard like some financial doomsday prepper. They use the system's own rules against it. Here's the play. You borrow the depreciating asset, the dollar, at these artificially low interest rates, and you use it to buy appreciating assets that throw off income every month, like real estate, income property. I mean, think about it. You're borrowing money that's getting cheaper every year due to inflation, and you're using it to buy something that's getting more valuable every year, while tenants pay you rent to cover the mortgage. It's like financial Aikido. You're not fighting the force, you're redirecting it.
By the time mainstream media reports the truth, it's already too late. That's why we built the Shadow Capital Brief, to decode money, housing, and policy before everyone else. Subscribe today, shadowcapitalbrief.com.